Hello, Bucs fans, and welcome to Hear the Cannons. This is our instant reaction episode. I am Colin Hallboom, writer over at BucsGameday, which is Sports Illustrated's only website dedicated specifically to covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And please make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel and checking out our website on the daily for all things Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I have the pleasure of being joined by the owner and founder over at BucsGameday.com. He runs several sites for Sports Illustrated, none other than Logan Robinson at Logan's Twitty on Twitter. We had Caleb with us from the stadium, but the Wi-Fi was a little off, so we decided to just carry on without him. Obviously, the Buccaneers dropped a heartbreaker to the Washington Commanders. Final score 23-20 in this wild card playoff matchup at Raymond James Stadium. We had a number of members from our team down there live. To make matters worse, it was a last-second field goal, but it doinked. It was a doink. I was curious to hear if to those guys it looked at all like it might have missed, or the people in the stadium. For anyone who was at the game, feel free to drop your comments in here and we'll bring those up. Couple people, Todd has to go. That's a comment we're going to get a lot of, Logan, I assume, and I will certainly be asking for your input on that. But before we talk about Todd Bowles, I want to just talk about the untimely miscues. The two big ones in the second half, of course, being that fumbled exchange between Baker Mayfield and Jalen McMillan, what intended to be a jet sweep. I heard in the presser after the game, Baker said that didn't happen once this year. And then, of course, Graham Barton with the Bucs driving, all that momentum, snapped the ball early. And Baker had said that, I think Graham had thought that a defender was in the neutral zone, so he was trying to get them to draw that flag. That was his interpretation. I'm just curious, Logan, do you think one of those miscues weighed heavier than the other? Do you think it's a combination of the two? What do you think of those crucial errors down the stretch?
It felt like the Bucs wanted to beat themselves in this one. And, I think one thing that we've kind of found throughout this season is that sometimes the Bucs will show up and they will play dominant football. And then in some games where they have some things that they need to go out and execute, and it's more of a crucial game that they need to win, they kind of have nerves in some of these games. And I think this was one of the purest ones we saw this entire season, where they just had some things on their shoulders going into it and just made some mistakes that we don't usually see from them. And it happened on the offensive side of the ball, just kind of thinking way too much into things. And I think both of them were really bad. Probably though, that mistake there with Barton and Baker and whatever they were trying to do with the jet sweep, that just can't happen, definitely at the magnitude that you're at a playoff game. And it's so disappointing. It's a killer for you in the locker room, and I can imagine what it's like right now, as we have a lot of our staff there in that room, and just seeing the reaction from some of those players, because we saw the reaction on the TV from Mike Evans. I mean, he looked devastated. I mean, that was a rough way to end the game when you have that doink there, and you're like, oh, there is some hope where the Bucs still have, another try at it in overtime. But, the tough thing is, and I think we talked about it heavily within our staff, because we do cover the Commanders as well for Sports Illustrated. We've seen it all throughout the entire season of what they can do in late games in these fourth quarters. I mean, they're magical. If you go back, I think there's a lot of FSU fans that are also Bucs fans, but in 2013, Auburn had that same kind of magic with them, and they led and went all the way to a national championship, but FSU ended up winning. But there's just something around Dan Quinn and Jaden Daniels and this Commanders team that you don't want to be close in a score, anywhere close to a score with them in the fourth quarter. And sure enough, the Bucs just put them in that place to be and the crosshairs, and the Jaden Daniels and the Commanders executed like they've been doing the entire season in 2024. So, the mistakes, though, offensively for the Bucs, I think both were brutal, but probably that one maybe more with that fumble and with Graham Barton to go into Baker.
Yeah, and you mentioned Dan Quinn, and I'm glad you brought his name up because I think there was a pretty distinct difference between the mentality of these two head coaches, and that shone through when it came to their decisions on fourth downs. I think Todd Bowles throughout the game proved he was content settling for field goals, while Dan Quinn's aggressiveness on fourth down paid off. A couple instances where it was fourth and short in Washington territory, and Bulls wanted to settle for that Chase McLaughlin field goal, including the first field goal of the game, 52-yarder, which then they jumped offside, so it would have been 4th and 2. He declined it, wanted to stick with the field goal. And like while we're at it, talking about Bulls as well, some of the game management decisions that have plagued him over the course of his tenure as a head coach with the Buccaneers, a lot of fans and onlookers were scratching their heads a little bit about his lack of urgency using timeouts, letting some valuable seconds drain off the clock down the stretch. So this was coming into this game, this point of the year, a lot of people were pointing to this as being a make or break game for Todd Bowles, whether or not that's accurate and his bosses feel that way. I feel like there's a little more loyalty there from Jason Light than what the fans would like. But I would love for you to just kind of comment on how you thought Todd Bowles performed in this game, and we can discuss, I guess, briefly as well what we think the outcome will be for him and his future with this team, at least heading into next season with such a sharp offensive coordinator, Liam Cohen, in demand for other potentially head coaching jobs. I mean, this is a very precarious situation that the Glazers and Jason Light and his front office find themselves in. And I don't know if Todd Bowles did himself any favors tonight.
Yeah, no, I mean, we saw it throughout this entire season as well on the defensive side of the ball where you're getting eaten up. I don't know if it's true, if I can remember correctly, but did the Commanders have to punt in this game? I don't know. I need to look at the stat sheet. Someone in the comments, I'm sure, can tell us as well. But yeah, I mean, you let the offense and Jaden Daniels eat you up, and sadly, it is against a rookie quarterback. And we've seen from Jaden Daniels this year his elusiveness. He's just a tweener, man, but he can run, he can take hits, he can take shots. He's going to keep his eyes downfield, and a lot of his receivers came to play for him tonight. And McLaurin, we knew that touchdown to McLaurin when Hayes was in coverage, you just kind of saw that coming on that fourth down play. I stood up off the couch and pointed on the TV and said, "Watch out here. That ball is going to Terry McLaurin, and watch who it's going to be on. And it's going to be Josh Hayes in coverage." I mean, I think everybody at home just knew it was coming, or if you were in the stands as well. But you just knew that's exactly where Jaden Daniels was going to go with that ball. But defensively, just getting eaten up over the middle. That's something that has been a theme for the Bucs. Yes, they did well in the run game this year, but passing midfield, just not pretty at all. And it allowed for a lot of these teams to burn clock up. And that's exactly what the Commanders did as well, and keeping these drives alive and third downs. And you had so many close. There's a comment here about getting to Jaden Daniels in this game tonight, where that would have been a massive stop for the Buccaneers. And God, I mean, Kalijah Cansey was having a fantastic game. I mean, we would have talked so highly even more of him if the Bucs would have came away with the win. But just overall, though, he was playing as a menace in the trenches, and that play where he almost could have had a sack there on Jaden Daniels or gotten back to the backfield and gotten a big time tackle, just got stiff armed, and sadly there was no one else there to do any kind of cleanup if there was a possible stop before reaching the first down. Just the defense as a whole took some hits. We saw Jamel Dean too go out of the game with a knee injury. Zion McCullum went out with for a couple of plays because he was having a concussion evaluation. Just there are some pieces still that you wish would have performed better defensively, and there's going to be some question marks continuously, I think, with Todd Bowles until you just can't show up and have these many mistakes. I know offensively there was a lot more of execution errors, but still on the defensive side of the ball, I think you wish you could have performed better. And the Commanders did what they needed to do, and that's exactly what Jaden Daniels has been doing this entire season. And there was nothing really changed from that team. But the better team at the end of the year. They faced them at the very beginning of the year to kick off the 2024 season. And at the end of the year, the better team are the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, and sorry, what was his name? Carson there bringing up the Kancey missed tackle at the end. I mean, Kancey was a man possessed, as you mentioned. This game, it was a standout game. Collinsworth was showering him with praise as if he'd never watched him before, and I feel like his PFF grade should maybe start reflecting Kancey's performance because he definitely passes that eye test on the regular. But it's almost like this team, not just Kancey, but like specifically the D-line, have trouble finishing plays. Like that's been the story of Joe Tryon-Shoyinka's career. I mean, this team is in dire need of a guy who can get home, like a premium edge rusher. And Yaya is awesome, true sack rate, generates pressures, tackles for loss, but he really struggles putting up the sack numbers. And they need a guy who can get those sacks. And here we have a comment from JJH Cars on YouTube, says, missed tackles, not sacking Jaden over and over, the refs getting too cute with the fake wide receiver reverse. You got Bucky going, keep using him. It would have been an easy win. In terms of the jet sweep, the failed jet sweep, I have no issue with that play call, honestly. Like, as we mentioned already, they've run that flawlessly. Like, they have never failed the execution of that play. I think that's one of those instances where it's just the wrong mistake at the wrong time. And as you mentioned, Logan, and like I tweeted it out too, I was like, great, Jamel Dean's out. Josh Hayes is now lined up against Terry McLaurin. Like, we all know what's going to happen next.
Yikes.
And that leads me to another question that I think is worth bringing up at this point, and that is, did Jason Light, who gets so much praise, as he should because he's fantastic, and this franchise looks like a completely different organization since he's taken over, but does he get enough? Like, did he hurt this team? Did he fail this team in terms of the lack of depth? Because you cannot tell me there is not some better cornerback sitting at home playing video games tonight who could have been doing a better job than Josh Hayes. And we've seen it in every instance. Like, he just gets killed and teams attack him relentlessly. And my question is, like, why are they sticking with Josh Hayes so much? What is the loyalty there? And should Light have done more to better equip this secondary when all those injuries started creeping up, especially with a guy like Jamel Dean, who's always out of the lineup?
Yeah, and I tell you what, just going back to that 4th and 5 play or 4th and go, whatever that was, where they did connect to Terry McLaurin there, 4th down. I know, we got Jamel Dean's out of the game, and you got Josh Hayes in coverage there on a man-to-man. I know Zion's not your man-to-man guy. Jamel is that, but I'm switching up. I got one play. I'm putting Zion out there. I mean, Zion's going to be facing more of these starting guys. He is the starting cornerback. You have a backup cornerback in. I'd way rather rely on Zion McCollum there on that play. And I don't know why there wasn't a switch up there in personnel, in my opinion. And it costed you. I just doesn't make sense. Definitely when you're in the end zone too as well. I'd rather have a lengthier, longer guy as well, more athletic as well, taller. Why am I not putting Zion on wide receiver 1? That's something that I scratched my head about. And, like you just said, though, I mean, Hayes, is there not a better option that you can find there? And yeah, like I was kind of pointing to before we were starting to discuss this, there's some things that they got to do in the offseason and finding some guys and some personnel and the draft, free agency, whatever's got to work where you can have somebody and start adding to a good depth piece here, because Tyke Smith has been good in the secondary. I think that's a good addition there. And you hit there in this rookie class all across the board. I mean, a lot of these guys were influential players this entire season, but some of the depth pieces behind your starters, you would like to have better options there. Definitely when a guy like Jamel Dean is injury prone. There's a reason why he moved on from Carlton Davis, and he's not finishing the season there with the Detroit Lions. What a shocker, because he can't ever stay healthy as well. But yeah, I mean, your past, and with Jamel Dean, and it was with Carlton Davis as well. Those two guys just can't stay healthy, and you would think that they could maybe build a better depth behind their starting cornerbacks. But dude, I'm putting Zion. I don't care if he's not your best man cover. I mean, why would I put Hayes there? I'm putting Zion, my other starting cornerback, on Terry McLaurin in a 4th and 5, 4th and goal. Massive, gigantic play. Just missed opportunity from Todd Bowles, and I think a major mistake.
Yeah, a couple penalties crept up, questionable penalties, I guess, but Zion still made plenty of plays in this game. And he let Jaden Daniels know he was there early on with that massive hit where he threw him out of bounds. I thought that was a good momentum boost for the defense. But yeah, man, I like looking ahead to April's draft. I wouldn't be shocked if Jason Light just went an all defense draft, man. This team needs a corner. They certainly need an inside linebacker and edge rusher. They could use a safety. Who knows what the status of Jordan Whitehead is moving forward? You need depth there. So lots of question marks there. Dion Jones came in, actually gave some valuable reps at linebacker, which I thought was interesting. Our first real look at him, but Levante David at the end of the game got banged up. I'm not aware. And if any of our viewers are, feel free to drop any of that intel into the comments, but of his status. Levante balled out tonight, and I'm just curious, like, what do you think are the chances that's the last we see of Levante David and pewter and red? Because that'd be a tough way to watch him go out. And I'm kind of curious what you think, Logan, and any of our viewers who want to chime in on what they expect the future to be for Levante David and this football team. Because the Bucs may have 2 vacancies if Levante hangs him up.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Levante, much loved around the community, much loved in that locker room, highly respected, one of the biggest leaders, if not the biggest leader on this team. Everybody goes to him to celebrate, or if there's any kind of big thing that happens defensively, it's led by Levante David, as it should be. And, also too, seeing him get injured at the end of the game, I'm unsure, we got to see what kind of update we get there from him, because that will be key to watch moving forward as we head into now the offseason for the Buccaneers. But he's played at a high level this year. I think a lot of people watching these games and seeing how 54 plays on a week-to-week basis, I mean, he still got some juice, man. I mean, it's highly, highly impressive. It's something that we might not see again for a long time, just the way that this guy plays at an elite level and can do it. And, with all these younger pieces around him as well, it's not just only what he's doing and playing, but he's another coach out there on the field for the Bucs. And he just plays such a pivotal part in that defense, But yeah, there's a big question mark there on what, the future lies for Levante David. I would like to think that he, that wasn't it for him. And I don't think it's even, Levante. I think I think there's going to be some question marks from some of these, a couple other veterans we got to see. I know, Mike Evans he's signed, he's got his contract extension and stuff, but I think there's some question marks from some guys that have been around for a long time. And this loss right here hurts a ton because they thought they had a squad here that could make a run through the playoffs more than what they had last year. And I taking a loss in the first round here in the wild card is absolutely devastating, really crushes a lot of hope. And, depending on where their hope lies, is it, question marks about the coaching staff, Bowles and how he coaches this team, or is it just natural, that it's time to hang things up, and he tried as best as you could. But we'll see if that's the last time we see Levante David, but I still think that he plays at a high level, and just having him in the locker room is such a massive deal on and off the field.
Yeah, I mean, chasing down Jaden Daniels at his age is crazy, in his mid-30s. I mean, Levante's he's got plenty in the tank still, if you ask me, man, that guy. So I think his performance this season's honestly slept on a little bit. Like, I feel like he's been really solid. Now, talking about another ageless wonder, and I can't believe we've gotten almost 20 minutes into this discussion without bringing up one Michael Lynn Evans and how he matched up with Marshawn Lattimore. A lot of people were geared up for this matchup, myself included, you included, and I'm sure every one of the people watching this show right now. And man, Mike wasted no time getting to work and proving who was the alpha dog in that matchup. Finished with 7 receptions for 92 yards and a touchdown, but he was very consistent all game, just getting what he wanted from Lattimore. Unfortunately, the Bucs had over 10 minutes less time with the football, and the offense was stalling out, but to no fault of Mike Evans, man, because he was doing work. And then, that touchdown drive was awesome. Mike had a bunch of yards, bunch of catches, and Baker just kept going back to him right up to the 2-yard line. And first play, they didn't run it in. He for Mike Drew, the PI, the play before. So you got a fresh set of downs and from the doorstep of the goal line. And then on the very next play, burned him on a slant, and Baker delivered a beautiful ball. So Bucs fans, we can all rejoice and at least knowing who is on top of that matchup, because there's been a lot of chatter. And Cam Jordan, before the game, previewing it for CBS, was talking about how Lattimore's got the better of Mike. Well, I think that discussion took a firm turn in favor of the Buccaneers' Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee. What'd you think of that matchup tonight, Logan?
Man, it was fun. It's always fun to watch Mike whenever he's fired up, and you just know he's going to get into his groove. And dude, I mean, he was dominating Lattimore, and Lattimore's coming back, didn't play in their last game, and was trying to get back after an injury, and he's just couldn't hang with him. And Mike Evans just on his roll after getting that streak in the last week, and that was also a beautiful ball. Talking about that touchdown grab from Mike, a beautiful ball over the head of, I think there was a safety that had kind of understood what was about to happen there with having Mike Evans coming that quick inside route into the end zone. And that was just a beautiful ball there from Baker. Those two have a really nice chemistry. Mike got the win over Marshawn Lattimore, but as we know, Mike Evans as a guy and his character, he wanted this win. Just seeing that reaction at the end of the game when that field goal went in for the Commanders, devastation, mad, not happy, angry. This locker room is filled with a ton of competitors, and it's all led there, with Baker Mayfield. And, for the factor of them who they both were trying their hardest to come away with the win was massive. But I think a lot of these mistakes, these errors that they made in executions really pissed off, it's going to piss off your oldest guys like a Mike Evans, and it's also going to hurt you. And a lot of these other vets that are on the team, it's aggravating, absolutely aggravating. And, Mike Evans continues to deliver on a year-to-year basis, but he put in a lot of work this offseason. We were covering him a ton whenever he was doing a lot of offseason training and, trying to get that hamstring. Always have dealt with that hamstring injury woes going all the way back to Texas A&M at the college level. But he worked so hard during this offseason to try to stay healthy. And yes, he missed those games in the middle of the year, but still was able to deliver and get 1,000+ yards on the season. And it's like I said earlier, I couldn't imagine what the feeling is inside that locker room, because that's just people that cover the team, that are hands-on with them, but also fans too. It just pisses you off. Sometimes you have losses and you played really good. You played well, and it's just kind of heartbreaking. This one is just more of we don't feel like we got to show the rest of the league, the rest of our fan base how we really play ball. And that's just not how the Buccaneers have really shown how they played this year. Yes, they've played kind of down to some of their competition and have not shown as much fight and kind of had some nerves, but this one was just the nerve part, yes, but just the mistakes just can't happen. You just can't have that kind of thing happen in the playoffs. And sure enough, Bowles and the rest of the squad had a handful of them that hurt them.
Yeah, lack of execution for sure would be a defining feature when looking back on this game. Be remiss if how would you assess Baker Mayfield's performance in this game? He was 15-18 quietly, so very efficient passing the ball, though on a limited number of attempts. He still had 2 passing touchdowns, and of course credited with that big fumble loss we talked about. What do you think of how Baker played tonight, Mr. Robinson?
I think to me, it is the theme of wish you could have had more time to see more of Baker Mayfield with the ball in his hands, because we did see that physical run there that he popped Bobby Wagner, which Bobby Wagner is one of the biggest linebackers in the league, and put a run on him. And I love hits and everything, and just the physicality that Baker plays with. And Baker does it. It's not just to make that play, which is, yes, that's one of the big things there. But it's to also show the rest of the team that it's time to nut up and go make an effing play, and just not let the foot off the pedal. We got to put some gas on it. We got to go. We got to change this momentum. Everything's got to go forward for the Bucs, and that's why Baker plays with that physicality. I got to see him, the college level, and he had that same kind of way about him. And at the time we all thought he was kind of annoying with it or whatever, but now you see him in the league. And now, not even just Bucs fans, but fans across the NFL just kind of love the way that he plays, because he is trying to send a message to the offensive, to the entire offense, send it to the defense, special teams, the coaching staff. Like, come on, well, we got to get things going, man, and build some momentum. But I wish, it's kind of just a thing. Wish we could see more. Wish we could have saw more, Colin.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's genuine when you're talking about that attitude, that whole persona he carries. Like, at first, you're like, "What's this guy saying?" Like, chill, man. But you realize that's just who he is, and he is an ultra competitor. And we saw it last week when that run he had that he finished, and he stepped over the defender against the Saints. That really kickstarted the offense. And today, that when you're talking about him lowering his shoulder, that 3rd and 9. Bucs still without a touchdown, trailing in the game, first half coming to a close, and he comes up with an 18-yard run through traffic and finishes the run with his shoulder. Pretty rare to see a quarterback this day and age in the NFL do that, and that's exactly what you're talking about. And I think it's pretty obvious that not just his teammates, but the fans can really relate and identify with that type of leader on the team. And, it's been well documented at this point, but there's no question that Baker Mayfield has this locker room and the respect of everyone in it. If for anyone who tuned into the post-game presser, Bowles talking very highly of Baker and Baker refusing to disperse any sort of blame anywhere but upon himself when asked about the fumble and some of the miscues, and even asked about Graham Barton's issue there. He tried to provide a rational reason why that Barton may have snapped the ball earlier, mentioning he was trying to draw someone catch someone in the neutral zone. So just, further examples of Baker's leadership. And I think he's matured so much as a professional, as an athlete, as a leader over the course of his NFL career. And I think he's really learned from some of the turmoil he experienced, in Cleveland, then in Carolina, then with the Rams. And he's really found himself here in Tampa. And I know we've talked about that in the past, but I just think it's kind of what you're getting at. And it's very true. So.
Yeah, Baker, he's a fun guy to cover. He was actually talking in a presser, I think it was this week's actually. Yeah, it was, whenever talking about stats, and does he keep an eye on his stats and his touchdowns and his completion percentage and how many touchdowns he's thrown. And he said he admits that, yes, back in his day when he was younger, even in the league, yes, he would look at his numbers and kind of be like, I wish those were a little bit better. And, keep an eye, kind of being a little bit more, having an ego there, he admitted. But now he just doesn't care. It's all about wins at the end of the day, and making sure that he is doing the right job for himself, being behind this, leading this offense, but also leading the team overall. And to be able to do that, you just can't worry about those sort of small things to him. But after, the entire stat line, I don't have it here from the season overall, but Baker Mayfield having an incredible season. The regular season, 4,500 yards, 40 plus touchdowns. What a season, man. What a season overall for him. And, you lost Chris Godwin earlier in the season as well. It just kind of goes to show, Baker, put anything out there. He was connecting so much too with some of those tight ends. If Ryan Miller's out there, he's connecting there to make some big plays. It's just on a week-to-week basis, he would show up for you. And yes, there'd be some mistakes. It's the NFL. You're going to make some mistakes, but it's the way that you respond, and also to keep your team motivated to get down the field and try to keep things within reach. It's just something that Baker does a really good job at. But, I think one of the key aspects is being a leader in the locker room. And it helps a ton when you have a quarterback there that will fight for any kind of inch, a yard. He'd made some incredible plays this season, Colin, and showing his physicality, running over people. You want to play for a guy like that. And, the Bucs aren't done with him. Got a couple more years left, minimum. But I think the Bucs got their guy moving forward. There's no reason to doubt that. And time to build around him moving forward some more.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I want to hit on before we wrap up is the importance of keeping Liam Cohen in the building. I think Jason Light, the Glazers, whoever it takes, needs to do whatever it takes to keep Liam Cohen in-house. Baker already had to switch from Dave Canales, exceed expectations. He gets hired by within the division. And now you have Liam Cohen, who put together one of the most impressive seasons for an offensive coordinator, maybe ever for this team, just based on what he had to work with, the things he had to deal with, injuries, young guys at key spots on the O-line, at receiver, at running back, and to completely transform this offense into a top 5 group, both in terms of running the ball and throwing the ball. A truly incredible accomplishment. Has Baker Mayfield looking like a former Heisman Trophy first overall pick type of quarterback. You cannot let Liam Cohen leave the building if you're Jason Light. I think, again, I mentioned a precarious situation earlier, and there's no question this front office finds themselves in that because I believe there is a loyalty to Todd Bowles, a relationship there. And I think you got to give it to Bowles, no matter how you feel about his in-game management decisions or how poorly his defense performed this year for what's supposed to be a specialty. He is respected and his players play hard for him. But at the same time, at what point are you willing to sacrifice keeping one of the brightest offensive minds potentially in the game and Liam Cohen in the building? And I just think the way the game's trending, I think having an offensive minded guy is really key in a key spot, in an important leadership position. And I don't know, you can't be any worse at these in-game management decisions than Todd Bowles is, man, with timeouts. And I know hindsight's 2020, and Bowles had done a better job as this year went along in terms of risking or going for it on 4th down a little bit, but I would have liked to see him go for it on the 4th down once today. So that's just a little bit. And then here, we got a comment about that right now. The moment the Bucs went for the field goal instead of going for it on 4th and 2, I said we lost. Bowles may be great at calling plays, but he can't teach his guys how to cover to save his life. Yeah, and like the injuries have to be acknowledged, but it's the NFL, man. Everyone's injured. Every team is beat up. That is not a legitimate excuse. Unfortunately, it makes your job harder, but I just feel like that group underperforms still. So there are many questions to come as it relates to Todd Bowles' future with this team. My prediction, for what it's worth, is that Bowles will be back, but I think the Bucs managed to keep Cohen in his current role for at least one more season, buy themselves a little bit of time, and then hopefully have this same decision to make a year from now is sort of what I expect. What do you think as it relates to Bowles' status, Logan, if you had to put your name behind what you think will happen?
I think it all relies on Cohen here. To me, right now, I think Liam Cohen's going to do his due diligence. I mean, it's very rare. It's hard to get an NFL head coaching job. And when that opportunity arises, you got to take those opportunities. But I do think, though, that he is a tad bit picky, though. He is going to be picky a tiny bit on where he would like to go, depending on a whole lot of things. It always leads to, if you're an offensive coordinator, at the quarterback position. And, it depends on how he wants to go into it. Also, there's a ton of candidates as well for these NFL head coaching vacancy jobs, Colin. And
one job's sorry to cut you off, but one of those jobs isn't there anymore, right? With Mike Vrabel being hired and that there's one of those sharp quarterbacks at Drake May. So sorry, I just wanted to.
Exactly. No, exactly. You're not wrong. And that's the thing, how picky is he going to be at that opportunity? Let's just say, someone like the Jaguars, you got Trevor Lawrence there as well. There's some major question marks for the Raiders on what they're going to do. They're going to have to go to in the draft and find their future at the quarterback room. But, we've talked about it and also have covered it heavily at BucsGameday.com as, Tom Brady is playing a massive influence now, being a minority owner for the Raiders on, he's known pretty well now about Liam Cohen. Yes, he's a big fan of Ben Johnson. Everybody should be over there with the Detroit Lions leading them with Jared Goff. But, the thing to me is, Liam Cohen and what this looks like moving forward with him, the ideal situation, most likely. I mean, there depends on how far you want to go with your ideal situation. But to me, I think the realistic, I should say, is that you'll see Bowles here next year, and then Liam Cohen's coming back for a second season because I think he believes in his quarterback with Baker Mayfield. Why wouldn't you? I mean, what Baker was able to do this year was really impressive. Those two have a great relationship too, as well, just being there behind the scenes in the building and at these practices through training camp. I mean, those two got along very, very, very quickly. And what also, too, Liam Cohen was able to build so quickly in just 1 year is really impressive. Yes, he was play calling there for Kentucky, but to come in at the NFL level and do it for the first time and to click so well with Baker Mayfield. I think it says a lot. And I think, Liam Cohen does see where, Baker, he can lead you to a deep postseason run. He can take you to a Super Bowl. I'm sure he feels like that can happen. But, this all relies on if the opportunity arises for Liam Cohen, or if he gets picky and says, maybe this isn't the right year. Maybe I wait another season and see what opens up next year for me. But there's a lot of other names, though, right now that a lot of other teams are looking at. But Liam Cohen has continued on throughout this season to make himself a name to be known. Maybe it's a little too early, but maybe there's a team right now willing to say, screw it. 1 year is good enough for me. Let's go and go get our guy. So we'll see. But there's definitely some question marks, I think, across the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan base in the future under Bowles and this coaching staff right now.
Yeah, and you got to, man, if the Bucs could bring back Godwin, you get McMillan in his second year, Bucky in his second year, this O-line. There are appealing features of what he has in place here with Tampa, and all those guys understanding his offensive system could really be potent next year if the Bucs manage to retain Liam Cohen's services. However, for this year, they put a bow on it. Not a pretty bow with how they lost on a last-second field goal that doinked to the Washington Commanders, 23-20 in favor of the Commanders. The Buccaneers season is done. It is no more. And there will be changes to the roster, potentially to the coaching staff. There always are. And we will continue to have you covered at BucsGameday.com, which, again, for anyone just joining us, Sports Illustrated's only website that covers just the Bucs all day, every day. So make sure you are visiting our website on the regular. Check out or subscribe to our YouTube channel. Shoot us a follow on Twitter. You see our handles there on the screen, at Logan's Twitty, at SI_Buccaneers. And we will continue to strive to provide you, Bucs fans, with the best content that exists as it relates to your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I regretfully bid farewell to you on the night that the 2024/25 season ended for your Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So until next time, go Bucs. Logan, thanks for joining me. Be well, everyone.
Yeah.